Hello, everyone, and welcome to watching a 12th episode of Man's Guide to Happiness. I created this segment in my channel because I believe we need more happy men in the world. And for this episode, I have invited Tim to join us. Hi, Tim.
Hi, glad to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit about yourself first.
My full name is Tim Lewis. I probably should change. I'll change it down here during the show at some point. But I'm a UK-based author. I've written 7 books, and now I mostly help people with video editing and other stuff. But I've done quite a few things. So just say I'm a UK-based author for now.
hmm What are just for a side question, what type of books are you writing?
Well, I started off becoming interested in online business because I actually started to write time travel and fantasy books. So just
Oh,
like just fairly light books
mm-hmm.
in science fiction and fantasy.
Science
The
fiction.
last book I wrote was actually about social media networking, so how to use social media to connect with people online. So that was a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, let's go to the happiness topic.
Yeah.
So, in your point of view, what is the generalized view of what people think happiness is for men? When they think what makes men happy, what do you think that is?
Well, I have been thinking about this a little bit, and it's hard to say, like, oh, this is what makes men happy in general, because different men will respond better to different things. The most obvious thing is not having the negative things in your life. So, not being really hard up for money, um, not having an unhappy relationship with somebody, in some cases, having a relationship with somebody as opposed to not having a relationship with somebody. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say there's. I, I think it's a mindset as much as anything, and that's true for both sexes. It's being above where you think you should be in life, and that can depend. So if you're living somewhere in Brazil, for example, or somewhere, well, Brazil, because Brazil is a huge country, but let's say you're a very poor slum area of Brazil, Rio de Janeiro or somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
your view of if you're doing much better than all the people around you, even by Western standards, you would be considered very poor, you could be
Mm-hmm.
happy. But a man in the UK or the US who has got way more resources and opportunities and even relationship could feel unhappy because they haven't got that relative um, kind of feeling of being ahead, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. So you traveled a lot.
Yeah. Well, in the US, I've traveled a lot. But I
Yes.
suppose, yes, but most people think I have traveled a lot. So, yes, I've been to
Mhm.
49 of the US states. And
49. So
yeah,
that's pretty much close to all of them. What states you still have to travel?
I've got Hawaii, which I always plan to be the 50th state because it's Hawaii 50. It is the 50th state. I originally intended it to be for my 50th birthday, but then COVID happened. So
Oh.
it'll be just before my 51st birthday that I go to Hawaii. So I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it's
Mhm.
so I have been to, I mean, the next question people ask about that, going off the happiness topic a little bit,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
is that what counts as visiting a state? And mine is I have to do something, an activity in that state, either eat or visit an attraction or stay overnight there. So it's not a case of I've been in every single state for days upon days. Like
Mhm.
Iowa, I was in there for about an hour visiting the
Mhm.
museum in Iowa. So I have visited 49 states. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
that makes still it still counts. Like people, I think some people count even just driving through.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't count dry. I don't count airport transfers, and I don't count driving through as thing, but that's personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So looping back to the happiness theme on that, I think this is probably more of a thing for men than women, as in having some sort of task to complete, to work to completion, like visiting all 50 states, actually is a source of happiness for men, which I don't think it is generally for women. So if you wanted an actual gender divide on happiness, I think men are much more into collecting and finishing tasks and things than women are as a source of happiness.
Mm-hmm. I heard other men in the show saying the same thing, like having a goal or mission.
Yeah,
The same thing, having something like that that makes men feel happy. Even
yeah,
if like just like trying to reach it, not that you have to be getting it right away, but having that goal and doing something towards it, that's what creates the happy feeling.
it's the progress towards the goal. It's not actually doing the goal, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So now I've got like, what am I going to do beyond February? And then I'm kind of like, oh, I'm going to Mexico. Mexico's got states. And I'm like, no, can't visit every Mexican state. So yes, there is something about in that process of doing something which it can lead to a form of happiness.
Hmm. So you were saying there's a lot of differences between men's and women's view of happiness as well. What do you think that the differences are?
Um, well, I'm always a bit loath to say men are this and women are that
Hmm.
because I grew up in that generation when views were changing and the rest of it. Um, a lot of it is to do with just the different life paths that men and women tend to take. So obviously, I think women have a lot more satisfaction based on bringing up children.
Hmm.
Though I'm not a father, I've never been a father, so I don't know about the father side of things. So that may well be true for men as well, as in like the whole satisfaction of bringing up a little human of either
Hmm.
sex. But traditionally, that's obviously been an area where women have got more. I mean, I wonder how much of happiness is just based on society's expectation of what should make us happy, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because my life is unusual in that I used to be like an IT developer and I used to be just a normal, well, I would say 9 to 5, but it was more like 9 to 6:30 sort of corporate person who works in software development. And then I got married in 2007, but my wife had a stroke in 2009. And then she was disabled for like 2 years and she passed away in 2011.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Um, so that kind of gave me a totally different, like I was going through the whole things that you are supposed to do in the West. You
Hmm.
are supposed to get married. You're probably supposed to, we were trying to have kids. We obviously didn't get that far, but I was along the whole happiness path in a way. And then it just all went totally skew-iff because of health.
Hmm.
So I've kind of had the whole being able to step away from that. And too many people, myself included, I think we let our happiness be defined by what other people think should be happy for us.
Hmm.
And those roles are very, very gender based.
Hmm.
But I do wonder actually if both men and women really, in general, find the same things that make them happy. But we've been told for so many, we get all of this propaganda that we should do this to be happy.
Hmm.
And actually, I'm not sure that's necessarily true.
I don't think that's true, but what are the ones that can you specify what are the ones that society tells men?
Um, well, it's usually about status as much as anything. So, um, and a lot of it is, as I say, you can be your peer group of people that you're with. So the funny thing is that in general, like somewhere like London, it's all about trying to. It's funny in London, it's like trying to get into the centre and be a place and live a place in the centre because it's so expensive. So everybody's
Mhm.
calling to try and get into the centre, and then as they get older, they meet somebody and then they try and move out to get to more suburban places again. And it's all about like trying to increase your salary, trying to increase your job, get a bigger house. Like part of the problem with housing crisis in both London and New York, probably San Francisco, is that everybody is told the first thing that people think of when they get a pay rise is, can we move to a bigger house, or can we get a bigger place or a nicer place? And that is a very materialistic kind of thing. There is very much taking care of your family kind of viewpoint in what you would call male happiness role modeling. I don't know what term you've got more experience than this than I have, but yes, I mean, it's generally about success in terms of materialistic things, being a good father or good employee, being successful. That's one of the major things that pushed upon men in terms of happiness.
But I think for society, it's external success.
Yeah.
And like all those happiness goals for men are external instead of actually what makes men actually feel happy. So those are, like you were saying, the external things that society thinks men should have, and then men think they should have that as well. And that makes them happy. But then they try to pursue it. Well, pursuing it feels good. But like when they get just the thing, that just by itself is not happiness.
Yeah. Well, the trouble is it's all transitory. So it's like, it's kind of like visiting all 50 states, now I say it. But while you're doing it, it's kind of like, oh, you've got the next goal. But then when you get to that next goal, it's like, well, do I need this big house in the Hamptons or wherever? Once you have it, it's like, well, this doesn't make me happy. Reaching for this kind of made me happy because I thought it should. But yeah, it's interesting.
So actually not the item by itself, but the action and the movement trying to get it. That's what makes you feel happy, not the item by itself when you actually.
Reminds me of a conversation I had years ago, and this is a very I think it's a uniquely British thing, but they have a group of people who are mainly men, but I think there are some women who do it, who are called train spotters. And what they do is they go out with little notebooks, and they put in like apps now, and they go to train stations and they write down numbers of trains that they see, and it's all collecting like. And I said to somebody, these are like, what they're doing, they're getting happiness out of this stupidly trivial thing of collecting train numbers. So, I've seen the 123 locomotive that doesn't normally come down this thing. And I was saying to somebody, it's like we criticize people like that. It's like, well, how can you get enjoyment out of the hobby of watching trains? But in some ways, you can say, should we be jealous of them because they're getting happiness out of something that appears so minor? It's funny in a way. Are we the wrong people? It's like, should we all be train spotters? Should we be finding these small things to get joy out of? That's what I find interesting about train spotting.
I didn't know that's what train spotting meant.
Yeah, well, there was a film, but the film is ironically called Train Spotting because that's about drugs and heroin. Train spotting is actually a genuine thing. It's quite weirdly British.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't know it was actual thing, something like that. So, but that is true. Like if you find that little thing that is simple as that actually makes you feel happy, that's what you need.
Yeah, well, it's like you see people with like gardening and like they've got a little garden or they've got a little thing, and doing that can make people happy. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. If you can find something simple that's not too time consuming that you can enjoy doing, there's a lot to be. And I think there isn't. That's why a lot of men end up in these weird hobbies. Hobbies are a way to get an easy way of having happiness.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about this one, Tim. What after you got through that really hard part of your in your life, how were you able to get back to feeling happiness again? What were the thoughts in your head, or what were the actions that made you feel?
It's hard to say. I mean, part of it was jumping off the whole rat race, 9 to 5 kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really intended to start writing fantasy and time travel novels. I was intended to just do contract IT work. But because of insurance money, I paid off the mortgage and I had the opportunity to just do things in general. In a way, I could jump off. I didn't have to keep doing the whole work thing to keep paying for the lifestyle that I had, which is what happens to so many people. And it's fine when you're doing well, but so I suppose I got some happiness from just basically disconnecting and becoming more like online business focused and doing more more of a feeling of kind of liberty in a way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, freedom obviously doesn't associate directly with happiness, but a lack of freedom, it's like money doesn't associate with happiness, but a lack of money can make you very unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the two areas. It's like if your life is out of your feels out of your control, you have less control over your happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, if you have no money, then well, you don't have any freedom anyway. So it's kind of.
Yeah.
So I suppose that was how I started to get happiness back in terms of just having more control and over my life. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, because for a lot of people, they think that having the more money makes them happier, while just having enough money is already your level of happiness, but you have less than enough, then you have less happiness.
I think there's a level of there's certainly correlation between money and happiness,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it's much lower than people think.
Mm-hmm.
um, Coming back to like if you people across the world, it's not like everybody who lives in sub-Saharan Africa is miserable or not happy because they have less money. The average person, I suspect you probably find people probably more happy.
Mm-hmm.
What money does provide, though, is the opportunity to change your life. So that if you are potentially unhappy, then if you can identify, money does give you a way to get out of a lot of holes quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is probably truest for people in bad relationships. Like some people are not going to leave that relationship because they just can't afford to. They know that if they leave, they're probably not going to see their kids. They're going to lose out. Going to have to pay, certainly from a male point of view, pay maintenance and all the rest of it. So, yeah, money is a solution potentially to some happiness problems, but money in itself is not going to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so. Like, yes, more money generally will help, but you need to be able to spend that money in a way to make yourself less unhappy. Just
Mm-hmm.
having extra money will not make you happy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, what makes men feel good? It's like not happy, but just good. Like some
Um,
little things.
yeah, well, I mean, I think most of the things, I don't know if there's anything especially male that makes people feel good. Obviously, the usual kind of um, things like being praised, being treated well, uh, the usual ways that people can feel good illicitly by um, like drink, sex, the rest of it, all
Mm-hmm.
the normal things. Um, but Yeah, I think there's probably coming back to the whole hobbies and other things. I think there are probably more weird ways that men can feel good that women don't necessarily do as much. Though, as I've got older, I've seen that actually men and women are a lot more similar in many ways than people think. I mean, obviously there are physical and other differences, but I do wonder at times, like how much of it is this is the way it's always been done, so this is the way kind of it will be considered.
Mhm. But I believe men don't speak about happiness as much as women do by themselves.
Well, I mean, there's very much a culture and a tradition that men have to be self-reliant. I mean, this is especially true in the US, but even in the UK, for different reasons. I can't speak for men in the rest of the world because I've only been a man in the UK, and I can kind of speak a little bit for US men because I've travelled a lot in the US and met a lot of US guys. In the US, a lot of it is the whole cowboy person traveling over the kind of West Expanse sort of thing. You should be self-reliant and you should be able to do this. So you shouldn't be constantly worrying people because they've got their own things to worry about. So you just have to deal with it yourself. Obviously, from a British perspective, it's a lot of it is the whole imperial empire thing, which was stiff upper lip, which is very similar to the kind of cowboy in the well, not cowboy, but I don't know what you would call them. Somebody taking the Oregon Trail or whatever. It's kind of like they need to be self-reliant, so they don't want to be bothering other people with their issues. And sometimes men necessarily haven't, because the more you do something, the less the less you do something, the less good you are at communicating it. So somebody who feels like, oh, I'm going to start talking about this, they're not necessarily going to communicate it in a good way with somebody because they've never done it before. And I think that's an issue sometimes with male and female communication, in that women are used to talking about things and men aren't. And women don't necessarily understand that this might be the first time this man's talked to any woman about this or somebody. And they're just like, well, why are they not making sense? Why does it not make sense to me? And it's like, well, because they don't know they don't know how to talk in that way.
Exactly. I think that's why we need to talk more about men and happiness, so men will get comfortable talking about happiness, their own happiness. And that also makes them think more about it and not to think so much about what society wants them to do to be happy, but actually what makes them personally feel happy.
Well, I mean, I think that in relationships, certainly heterosexual relationships, again, I don't know enough about. I think actually, to be fair, I know enough people in lesbian and bisexual couple, women, to know it's similar to the heterosexual male-female thing, in that there's usually a lot of emphasis that making the other person happy is important. Almost to the point where they subsume their own feelings of happiness to make the other person happy. And there's usually one person in a relationship who is that way, and it's usually the man. But sometimes it's the woman. Sometimes it's the other way around. But usually it's the man who's trying to make the woman happy all the time. And that's not necessarily good, because they never say what makes them happy. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, making your partner happy can make you happy. But if you're making your partner happy makes you miserable, then you shouldn't be doing that. If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, it does. Because so many men, they think, like you said, making a partner happy, but then the woman as well, they're expecting men to do, not all, we don't generalize in that for sure,
Yeah.
but they expecting the men to make them feel in a certain way, where they have to understand that first they have to know how to make themselves feel that certain way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure it's ever a good situation where one person is relying on another person for happiness. If that makes sense. I mean, obviously there are some cases where that's going to be a thing, but if you're, because a lot of the time people don't know really what makes their partner happy, and they could just. And the worst situation is where both people are trying to make the other person happy, and they're both making each other unhappy, and that probably happens way too much as well. So yeah, you're right. You really need to be working on your own happiness in a way, working out what makes you happy in particular, and that is different for different people.
Exactly. You have to understand it's different for different
Yeah.
people. So I have this kind of question. When do you remember when you were little and growing up, were your parents doing things to make you happy, or was that even some kind of in your family? What was the happiness in your family when you were growing up?
I say we were relatively happy. I mean, we weren't especially well off. The funny thing is, we weren't really poor, but we were like the poorest people in the middle class neighborhood. So it's come out to the whole relative thing. And I was the second child, so I had a lot of the sort of hand-me-down stuff and the rest of it. But I weren't deprived or anything. And it was, I had two parents who stayed together, which seems increasingly rare nowadays. So yeah, I had a generally happy childhood. It's like I wouldn't say they were necessarily going. I think they were very mindful of the whole, because it was very much not spoiling children in sort of the Gen X generation I was in. So yeah, they didn't do anything stupid. It's like me and my older brother were very into computing, and they bought us computers and things. So yeah, I mean, it's like I suppose they did, but at the time it didn't feel like what every need was being catered for. And I think that's not actually a bad way to bring up children. I'm not sure a child who gets everything they want would be necessarily have a great adulthood, but I don't know really.
So that's why everybody has their own upbringing and their own point of views, what makes them feel happy, and that I think that's completely normal. You just have to understand what is for you instead of worrying what other people think that you should be doing for your happiness.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question then? What makes you happy as the happiness expert?
That's one of the reasons why I got to do the happiness expert thing and I started learning. I was one of the people that I consider myself, I was born happy.
Yeah.
I always had that feeling. So I was like always cheerful and all like excited and all the things. And I didn't understand why other people didn't have the same way of feeling. So
so you're always happy.
That's why in a certain point I started studying and learning how to teach other people to be happy as well, because I didn't really need a reason. I kind of had this thing like I didn't need a reason. So I was just I don't know. I just feel this way. I feel good most of the time. I still go through the same things. I still have hard times. I still get like sad, angry. I had hard times in my life. I had some health things. I'm divorced. Like I had all kinds of things happening in my life. But that didn't take my general emotion is still happiness that I always like have, and I always try to go back after I had those setbacks.
I think, well, I mean, from my experience, because I had some very bad times between like 2010, 2011, and a little bit afterwards. But in some ways, my baseline happiness has moved up because you compare it to really bad times. In some ways, the most not the most unhappy people, but often the most regularly unhappy people are people who haven't really had those severe setbacks because they've got nothing to compare to. So they break their toenail and it's like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And to the rest of us, it's like, well, that's nothing much. It's like that's not going to make me unhappy. So I think there is an element of that, but again, it depends what you mean by happy, and it's quite a hard term to actually describe. I mean, if you had to describe happiness in one sentence, what would you say it is to you? What does it mean to you? I'm interviewing you here, sorry.
For me, I thought about it actually, Tim. I thought about it, and for me, it has to be that it's genuine.
Yeah.
You don't pretend it. Like if you don't feel that in that moment, it's okay that you don't feel in that moment. You're not gonna say like, yeah, everything is fine when it's not. But you know that when you deal with the problem or whatever it is, then you can get back to that state again.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, one thing I've noticed since I've been working, because I've changed radically the kind of people that I hang out, because I used to work in corporate financial IT, which is very, very male dominated. And now I kind of work in publishing, social media, like I go to loads of conferences and do events and things. Way more female orientated in general. Like I go to a conference that's usually like 80% women. And you're right in that women talk a lot more about things. I know a lot more about the people I kind of interact with now than I used to years ago. Men would just not talk about anything really. It was like we talk, but we'd be talking about something like football or the weather or thing. We wouldn't be talking about how somebody's on antidepressants and all the rest of it. But one of the things is there seems to be an awful lot of people on medication for either antidepressants,
Yes.
anxiety, ADHD, you name it. And I wonder how much of that affects people's baseline level of happiness, because I've never been on antidepressants, but from what I've heard, it makes you basically not care about things as much. And I suppose in some ways that helps to make people happy, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing, really.
Right now, when you're asking, I don't think it helps with happiness. I think it's exactly like you said. It's just like you don't care as much anymore, because it keeps you in one level of calmness or something like this. But I think it covers your real issue. You're just taking a pill, but you're not. It's okay. I see the pills okay if you're still doing the work as well. Like you see somebody or talk about it. But if you're just taking a pill, as soon as however long the pill works, 4-6 hours, you're back and everything is back to the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are instances where all of these, well, certainly ADHD medication is very useful for people with ADHD, but I think there are a lot of people who are on antidepressants who should have been on it for a while to get over the worst of the issue and then come off it, and they just stayed on. But I don't know if that really affects their happiness or not. So maybe that was a sideline, but I think not caring in a way can also stop you from making the changes you need to become happy. So I would say that's probably negative in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. Just makes you not to try to get to another point in your life.
Yeah.
And I say as well, you ask about my happiness. I've had time. For me, happiness doesn't mean like you have everything, what you want. It's not. It can be your goal or something like this, but that doesn't measure if you're happy or not what you have. I had moments that I had a lot, and I had moments that I didn't have anything, and my happiness it goes a little bit up and down because of that. But it's still, if you have the happiness in there, it helps you go through those situations.
Yeah. Well, I think it is very, like, if your expectation of something is one thing and then you get less, that can make you unhappy. And similarly, if your expectation is something is less than what you have now, then that can make you happier. But it's quite hard to define happiness in many ways. But obviously, it's a very important thing that people should be happy, especially men.
Mhm. But I think you definitely don't have to connect happiness to what you have.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's more about what you, I think, like you were pointing out for men, maybe about what you do, what you
yeah,
get to do.
yeah.
And
Well, I think I think there are a lot of unhappy men now because of relationships and the expectation that people should be um, like having a partner and having a family and doing the rest of it. And obviously, in the current world, dating is a little bit screwed up, and
Mhm.
it's
Especially
very
after
hard for
COVID.
people. Yeah, it's very hard for people to find partners, especially as I say, like um, I know many more women now, but in the past, I'm like, how would I meet women at friends of friends? I mean, I met my wife who was a friend of a friend, but
Mhm.
it's very hard now for the sexes to meet in any kind of meaningful way. And
Mhm.
people say, oh, there are dating apps, but that's very transactional. It's kind of like make a quick decision about this person based on what they look like and spurious
Mhm.
details. And that's not really been very good historically for people meeting people and making relationships. So
Yeah,
I
I
think,
wonder how it's going to be in the future because right now it's kind of completely changing, and you're right. It's really hard to uh, the dating and the finding the right person in certain age. I think as well. I think it's still
yeah,
easier for young kids because they go in a place they go even school or they go to events together or college or university wherever they are. They have this environment where they meeting same age other side, so it's
yeah,
better for younger, but after a certain age I think it becomes much more complicated in our world.
yeah. Well, I think there is an issue because of the internet. Let's say in the historically people, particular age groups, tended to stick more or less together. But now, like, if you're a 35-year-old man, you can go on the internet and message a 20-year-old woman. And
Hmm.
that never really used to be much of a well, I mean, yeah, there's always been for very, very wealthy people, like that kind of thing. But in general,
Hmm.
that was not something. But now, so you've got a lot of younger women who are being targeted by older guys and guys of their own generation. But the older guys are richer, so that they and I think this is causing all sorts of long-term problems in the dating market because the men who are 18 or 20 are seeing that a lot of the women of their generation are being taken by older men. So they're modeling their behavior on these people who are might be a bit on the sleazy side. And
Hmm.
then when they're 35, they're looking for the 20-year-olds. And it's very screwed up. And I think that whole opening up of generations, and I don't know what can be done about it really. I mean, I wouldn't want, you can't put the internet and social media back in the bottle. I think it's just people need to move more towards interacting with people of the other sex on a non transactional basis. So getting to know people. So join as many communities as you can about anything that's not to, and
Hmm.
nothing to do with romance or thing, and then talk to people. And in that way, it's a better way to meet people. But I'm single after writing a book about social media networking. So what do I know?
I'm single too, and I'm like
Yeah,
I'm happiness expert, but I'm single too because
yeah.
I have my own goals or what I'm looking for and everything. So um
But I mean,
so
that's
different. But I'm
yeah,
thinking right now it last 10 years with all the technology, so many things changed.
yeah.
So for the next 5 and 10 years, we're gonna have so much more changes.
Oh yeah,
We can't even imagine what the war is gonna look like from 5, 10 years from now. To like I even just the questions like, are we gonna have money or all the money gonna be just electronic? What way people gonna start getting paid, because if the AI does most of the jobs, then people have to find different jobs, which to a certain point, I think it might be depends how it goes, but if it goes in a good way, that allows if there's some kind of income for people to have, and then they can make AI do the work, and then they get the paycheck from AI doing the work. They get money from this way. That allows the people to be more connected offline, maybe. So
Yeah,
they have more time to do their hobbies and things because
yeah,
like if it goes in a good way, then AI generates them income. So they have more free time doing things, volunteer jobs or something that they can do for enjoyment more than because they have to get that money because the money is
yes.
coming in from automatic, something that I set up coming in automatically.
Yeah, well, I have views on it. Like I did an economics degree years ago, actually. It's like economics is basically like medicine was in the 15th century, though. It's like drilling holes into people's heads. They don't really understand. They try and pretend they do, but they haven't really worked it out yet. I keep coming back to the whole idea of when they moved from horse-drawn carts to automobiles, and they had all exactly the same arguments about how this was going to replace and make all of these people who were doing the horseshoes and the rest of it all, and we're all going to be yeah, I don't see AI changing the world as dramatically as people say, because people find new jobs. That's the thing. People find new jobs and new
Mhm.
jobs. But you're right in a way in that, I mean, one of the big things about the Western world, so the UK and the US and Western Europe, you don't see people starving in the streets anymore. You don't see people desperately begging for water. You see homeless people, and you see, but there's nobody starving to death because, like, there's so much wealth from previous things. So hopefully, AI will move that level of like what the basic minimum is in the West and in the wider world, so that things like healthcare and like living somewhere are covered as well. And then it's kind of that will give more time to people because as much as I was saying about like money doesn't give happiness, a lack of money and a lack of like housing, a lack of health,
Mhm.
a lack of things that can cause unhappiness
Yeah,
because it just takes
I
away
believe
your
so
ability
too.
to do
Yeah,
things. So
exactly.
hopefully AI will push towards that situation, but I can't see us all stopping and all these robots will be taking over looking after us. They could be, but I don't think
Well,
so.
yeah, not completely stopping, but it's gonna change.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, it will change, but not gonna stop completely things.
yeah.
So it's just put different. So it's, for me, I'm not scared of it. I'm just interested to see what it
Oh
is.
no, I think it's genuine. Well, I don't think there's really. I'm always been generally positive about technology in the future. I mean, I suppose the whole happiness can be related to your view of the world as a whole. If you think that like we're all going to be flooded by rising sea levels next week, then you're not going to be necessarily as happy as somebody who doesn't believe that. So yeah, I guess there is our interpretation of the future, but I suppose there's something in, and I was telling my mother this, it's like, don't worry about things until they happen. And it's very
Mhm.
hard to do, but we all have a habit of doing it. Worrying means you do the thing twice. You do it once in your mind
Mhm.
badly, and then it can either be good, not go the way you worried about it, or it will be as bad as you worried about it.
Mhm.
Um, but that said, I still worry about things. I still get anxious and do things, but I try to catch myself before I'm just doing the same thing twice. There's a difference between seeing that something is a possibility and trying to change it. So, like, oh yeah, I could miss the bus. Should I think about like different alternatives? That's one thing. But then there's just I can miss the bus, but there's nothing I can do about it. So why am I worrying? That's a very different thing.
Mhm. And I think it's gonna change as well what people think happiness is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, again, I think like a couple of 100 years ago, just being able to feed yourself and your family regularly would have made a lot of people happy. But now we're like, oh, we expect that. Like you can go into you can have the bottle and you can go into a Starbucks and fill up a bottle of water or whatever, or ask them, but they're not going to say like, where's your money for that? And it's like, oh no, it's just 150 years ago, even to get a drink sometimes is hard to do. You'd have to like try and barter something to get a bottle of water or something like that. So life has moved on, and what expectations of happiness has moved on as well.
And happiness have always changed.
Yeah, it's always relative. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting closer to the end as well. Before we do the end questions, Tim, tell us about what do you do in more sentences, and then how people all the viewers, all the links for Tim are in the bottom as well. You can look up what he is doing and how to contact him. But tell us more. What do you do and what people can reach you for?
Well, I'm not tempted to say I'm still trying to work out what I do, but at the moment, I've got 2 live shows I do. One is called Oh No, Not Another Live Show, where I interview people from around the world with a co-host from San Diego. And I've been doing that for a couple of years. And my other live show is where I interview people one-on-one about their favorite books. And I do that on Amazon Live. So I talk usually weekly, sometimes I'm off season, but weekly to somebody about their favorite books. And we just talk one book at a time. So that's the main thing.
Also, people access that not to be in a show, but access to see what books are.
I've got this huge list of books now that have been recommended by people, and I'm like, I need to read some of these myself. And I've got a big.
Is there like a Facebook account where the people, if they go on a Facebook and they can look up and they can see those reviews that you gone through?
It has got a Facebook page, but I've never put anything on it. So
Amazon page. I thought Amazon page.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually on Amazon, you can, if you go to bookchat.live, it should redirect to the Amazon page, and it's got all of the wish list. It's got the shows and it's got the wish list, so you can go through and look what people recommended. There's quite a lot of good books, and I think touchwood so far, I've managed to avoid too many people who are just recommending one of their friends' books. So these are genuinely books that people have like.
I'll come over and recommend my book, Joyful Life Jumpstart. So
yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like the author themselves will recommend their book, and it's fair enough. But usually the other books they recommend it, because I have been cagey about inviting people onto the show, because some people are like, I know they'll just be like, this is one from my friend, and this is not, and it's like, you've even read the book. So far it's been good in like just, it's either book lover, people who love reading books, or authors. And yeah, I've got quite a good list of book recommendations from that show.
Okay, cool. Well, to end up, I always ask all the guests same questions. So first of all, Tim, just for you, not with the generalized view, what is happiness, but just for you. What is happiness for you?
Well, right now I seem to get most happiness out of traveling. So going to particular places. I've also got a YouTube travel channel as well, Tim Lewis TCF, which I forgot to mention. Though I haven't done the video for a while, but I do get a lot of joy out of traveling. I get joy out of interviewing people, clearly, because I do a lot of that. And yes, just being kind of able to live more of a life that I want to live, if that makes sense. I get joy from being able to chop and change and do different things. Obviously, like most people, I'd like more money coming in and doing other stuff. But at the moment, yeah, I get joy from just living the lifestyle that I do at the moment. So that's, for me, where I get happiness.
Cool. And another one is name you already kind of did as well in this question, but let's go again and name about three things or activities that's just really simple everyday things, really simple everyday things that make you feel happiness in that moment.
Ooh. Well, clearly I like eating. Though, funny enough, it's I have noticed lately that sometimes eating in itself can be a weird thing, in that there are some things I go through little phases of liking particular types of food, and then I end up binge eating something else which I don't necessarily. But that's a whole other issue.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling, like going, I particularly like going to the lounges at airports and things. I actually like airports a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird. And going to a new state or a new country. I'm actually going to be going to Mexico in about a month, for about 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, doing new things as well. That's something that I think. I think I'm like most people there. I struggle between that fear of doing something new and the joy of doing something new. So it's kind of there is a balance there. But I do like new things.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like getting over that fear
Yeah,
feeling. It actually makes you feel so good on the other side.
yeah, oh yeah. It's like, and but it's not easy to get over it. And when the trouble is, once you've done it, you've forgotten how hard it was to get over that barrier. And I think that's one thing that makes a lot of people who try and teach stuff not necessarily the best people to listen to, because they'll forget very quickly how much of the emotional barrier it was to get over it and do that thing. And yeah, and it's like I remember years ago I started doing an audio podcast. It was just like talking into the microphone, and that terrified me. It's about
Mm-hmm.
self-publishing. I did a podcast on, but now I've got used. I've been doing like video shows for like 3 years now, and I'm like, fine. I don't. But it would have terrified me to do this
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago. But it's so hard to remember what that was like when you're talking about it now. So,
Mm-hmm. Because I
but
remember
yeah,
first when I was preparing to be on video and everything like this, what I did to prepare myself, we had this online classes that was comedy improv
oh yeah,
online class, and it was so cool because all you had to do is be really silly or weird in the camera. So it's
yeah,
like, okay, when I get through this, everything else is easy.
yeah.
So that's how I got my preparation for being online on a camera, because being in the camera, just feel somebody filming on a camera is one thing, but being on online camera talking like this is a little bit different as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's. Um, I mean, on the 3 or it might be 4 years. I've been doing it now, but I've had guests walk out in the middle of the show. I've had somebody's doorbell ring with like, all sorts of stuff that's happened. I had the chair I was sitting on collapse in the middle of one of the interviews. But you just get on with it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the skill of doing new things.
Hmm.
I mean, how closely this is associated with happiness, I don't know. But I think there is an element of like you can get happiness out of new things.
Hmm.
That said, the more you've done the new thing, it's not new anymore, and that level of happiness you get varies. Some things just make you happy, just anyway. But trying to think of something that makes me happy. I like walking in nature. Actually, that can make me happy. So, like, there's a forest nearby. That's
Oh, really?
nice to walk around. So yeah, I suppose that's. I should do more of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
That's why I'm saying. That's why I'm asking that question, because people
yeah,
have to know what those little things that make them feel happy,
yeah,
and do more of it.
yeah. But an amazing amount of people don't do more of it, myself included,
Hmm.
sometimes. Or they only do some of the things that I think
Yeah,
make them feel
they
happy.
kind of they know what makes them happy, but they don't do it. So that's kind of
Yeah,
the weird point.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Well, good. We got a lot of good information out as well, Tim. Thank you.
That's good. Yeah.
Hmm. Thank you. And all the viewers, figure out what makes you feel happy and do more of it. So thank you for watching. Thank you, Tim.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.